Great. Well, let's get into it. This offering is sort of based on a saying attributed, I think, to Socrates, and it was something along the lines of wisdom is knowing that you don't know. And I'd like to dedicate this to my Aunt Kathy, who just recently passed. So she's been on my mind as part of how this came about. But what I titled it is The Traveling Man. This we might consider this part two, as we've already done The Traveling Man part one. Subtitle is Curiosity, Humility, and Those Who We Think We Know. Okay, today I'd like to begin with a simple question. How many of you have ever surprised yourself? Not someone else, yourself. Maybe you became angry when you thought you were patient. Maybe you discovered courage when you thought you were afraid. Maybe you forgave someone you were certain you never could. Or perhaps you found yourself acting selfishly when you had always believed yourself to be a generous person. I suspect everyone here has had that experience. Now I'd like to ask a second question. If I can be mistaken about myself, why am I oftentimes so confident that I can understand everyone else? That question may be more important than it first appears, because today I'd like to suggest that one of the greatest obstacles to wisdom isn't ignorance, it's certainty. One of the central ideas in a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers, highly recommended, is surprisingly simple. Human beings are not nearly as good at reading other people as they imagine. We routinely believe we understand what others are thinking. We assume we can detect honesty. We think we can recognize their motives. We feel certain we've got them figured out. And yet, over and over again, we discover we've been wrong. Gladwell points to intelligence failures, court cases, political scandals, broken relationships, and countless misunderstandings, all rooted in the same assumption that we can accurately see into another's mind. But we can't, not nearly as well as we think. The problem isn't merely that people deceive us. The deeper problem is that we naturally overestimate our ability to know them. Psychology offers an explanation for this. Our brains don't experience reality directly. They build models. We've discussed this before. Models are incredibly useful. Without them, we would never get through the day. Now, when you see a chair, you don't analyze every angle and contour to be able to identify it. Your mind immediately produces the concept chair. When you recognize your wife's voice on the phone or a friend's voice, you don't consciously compare frequencies to figure this out. Your brain simply recognizes a familiar pattern. The mind is a magnificent prediction machine. It simplifies reality so we can navigate it easily. But every shortcut comes with a cost. The model is never the thing itself. As philosopher Alfred Korzybski famously observed, the map is not the territory. We never interact with reality itself. We interact with our representation of reality. And this has profound implications. It ends up, I don't actually know my wife. I know my model of my wife, assembled from memories of experiences, observations, inferences, and prediction. I don't really know my father. I know my model of my father. I don't even know myself directly. I know the story I tell about myself. That doesn't mean these models are false. Many are remarkably accurate, but they are always incomplete, and reality is always much richer than the picture we've created. Ironically, the people we believe we know best may be the people we understand least. Why? Because we've stopped looking. We only see our expectations and then collect data to confirm them. Curiosity quietly gives way to certainty. We begin saying things like, oh, that's just how mom is. Or my brother always does that. My wife never changes. My son is just wired that way. And notice what has happened. The living, changing human being or human process has quietly become a fixed character in our story. Yet while our picture remains frozen, they continue changing. Their fears evolve. Their expectations change. Their goals expand or contract in scope. Their struggles might shift, their understanding might grow. Sometimes the person standing in front of us no longer resembles the person in our mental picture. But we keep responding to the picture, not the person. I think this is where one of Freemasonry's oldest symbols comes alive. It's the idea of the traveling man. We usually imagine the traveling man as someone moving from town to town in search of work, but perhaps there is another larger lesson. A traveler enters unfamiliar places with humility. He doesn't assume, he observes. He listens before speaking. He asks questions. He learns the customs, the local customs. He remains teachable and curious. He expects surprises. Perhaps the traveling man is teaching us not simply how to travel through the world, but how to travel through relationship. Imagine greeting your wife this evening, if you're married, as though you were meeting her for the first time. Not because you don't know her, but because you know there's still more to discover in her. Imagine approaching one of your children that way, or your father, or one of the brothers sitting in this virtual room. How different would those conversations become? How many arguments might disappear? How much loneliness might dissolve? And how much deeper might friendship become? There's an old saying that marriage dies when curiosity dies. And I think there's tremendous wisdom in that. Curiosity says, tell me more. Whereas a mind convicted in certainty says, I already know everything I need to. Curiosity creates connection, and oftentimes certainty creates distance. One of the greatest gifts we can offer another human being is our willingness to keep discovering them anew. But the traveling man doesn't only journey toward others, he journeys inward. Perhaps the greatest stranger any one of us will ever meet is ourselves. There are motives that we don't understand, that are outside of our conscious apprehension. There's patterns that we haven't noticed yet, fears that we've never named, strengths we've never discovered. We all carry unseen influences, and as Carl Jung famously wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. How often have we explained our behavior after the fact, believing we knew why we acted, only to discover later that something much deeper was driving us, and our explanation was just a post hoc justification or rationalization for our behavior? Self knowledge isn't something we finish, it's something we practice every day, something we aspire to but never fully achieve. And this reminds me of another symbol we all know very well, the rough ashlar. We often think of the rough ashlar as something that needs improvement, and certainly it does. But before we improve the stone, we first need to observe it patiently, carefully, without assuming we already know its strengths and weaknesses, its inner composition, its points of cleavage. Every brother here today is unfinished and will be until we step off this mortal coil. Every spouse, every child, every friend and enemy, and perhaps most importantly, so are we. The rough ashlar reminds us that becoming is never complete. The traveling man reminds us that discovery is never complete. Together they teach the same lesson. Remain teachable when possible. Retain the mind of a beginner. I sometimes wonder whether wisdom is less about accumulating answers and more about preserving a sense of wonder. Children ask endless questions because everything is new. Adults oftentimes stop asking because we think we've already figured things out. Perhaps growing wiser is not becoming more certain. Maybe it's becoming more comfortable with mystery. Not the mystery that prevents action, but the mystery that protects humility and curiosity. So I'd like to leave you with a simple challenge. This week, choose one person who you've known for years, someone you've quietly stopped being curious about, someone whose your idea of who they are has crystallized in your mind. You don't think there's anything new to know. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to persuade them. Don't tell them who they are. Instead, ask one question you've never asked them before. Then listen, really listen. Become a traveling man of relationship, of psyche. You may discover someone entirely different than the person you've been carrying around in your mind as a model. And while you're at it, turn that same curiosity inward. Ask yourself, what assumptions about myself have I never questioned? What parts of me have I mistaken for the whole? What strengths remain undiscovered? What fears have I not fully understood? Brothers, the traveling man is not simply a mason walking from lodge to lodge. He is an attitude and an orientation toward life. He walks through the world expecting to learn. He walks through relationships expecting to be surprised. And he walks through his own soul expecting discovery. The wise man remembers that people can never be fully known. Not your wife, children, brothers, not yourself. And this isn't a discouraging vision, but one of hope, because it means every conversation still holds the possibility of revelation. Every relationship always has room to deepen, and every day offers another opportunity to become both traveler and student. And that's it. Thank you.
But I see in Sean.
Excellent stuff, Matt.
Thank you. Brother Sean, you got your hand up.
So, um, for a lot of what you spoke about, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein, which says, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." And it's not to say that knowledge isn't important, but it's how we use that knowledge and um, how we apply it and the creative ways that we can solve problems or understand each other better. That's where our imagination comes in. And I think the more we travel, the more we see the world, the more of an imagination we really have. Even as a kid, I mean, the kids with the best imaginations are usually the ones that have, exposure um, to different types of, to more different types of media and, as a kid. So, I just feel like, I don't know, I forgot, I don't know where I was going with that, but, yeah, I think, it's definitely important for us um, to learn how to think and not just think that we know or everything already, because that's what knowledge is, if we just go if we just look at knowledge, we can say, okay, this is what we know, right? But imagination challenges that and says, maybe there's something we don't know, or maybe there's still something else to figure out, and only with an imagination can we truly figure that out. And I think that's what a traveling man does. A traveling man uses his imagination to um to create to discern wisdom from knowledge.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sean. The thing that kept coming to mind for me was the phrase in here, the map is not the territory. Oftentimes we conflate what we think about a person or what we've sort of measured out and what behaviors we've seen, our own mental mapping. We forget that there's like a whole living process behind that that's much more extensive than our thoughts about it.
Say,
Mason?
Mason.
You, Brother Piper, and thank you, Brother Sean, for getting us all started off. Something that came to mind as we were listening to you for me was that this is like a underlying topic that we've gone over before. And it's almost like the reason why we don't move on is because we don't want somebody in the future to come along and have the I got you or I pulled one over on you. And so it's like you now preemptively have that defense mechanism where you're almost because they have the same behavioral tendency or they say the same phrase, you're putting them into the box, or it's even the same individual that you're not allowing to have the personal growth and development from the situation that is the trauma. That's just something I thought about.
Yeah, I'm totally getting what you're putting down there. Yeah, it's funny how many times in my life I've had this sort of situation where I'm interacting with someone and I know they're not seeing me. Like they are, I can almost see them applying this lens to me. Like they're interacting with this past thing and they're not acknowledging that I've become something different.
Well,
In
she
those
falls.
situations, Brother Piper, I feel like I'm almost put into like a third person
Totally.
where I'm in the conversation with them, but I'm not there because they're like talking past me, you know.
Yeah, I feel
Well,
you.
she falls Lance Para.
First of all, Brother Piper, that was amazing. Thank you for that. Second, apologies. I don't make as many of these as I wish I could. Um, being Master of the Lodge and in the Scottish Rite right now, my plate is really full. But I do appreciate the invite every week. Um, there is something I wanted to touch on, uh, Brother Piper, when you said like the mind is an excellent prediction machine. And I've said that quite often in my life too. That really resonated with me. And it's because that's how we've survived since, you know, Neolithic time, right? Like we had to predict things very quickly to survive. And so our brains became these machines that can discover patterns and discern information rather quickly through snap judgments. But like you said, it also works against us because that's where a lot of bias comes from, is that we make snap judgments. It's because we're running on Neolithic software in our mind,
Totally.
right? um, and I think there's something in the Masonic tenets that, I think those of us in a lodge here almost every month that has really helped me. And it's wisdom dwells in contemplation, right? The slower we can make our minds move in a situation, sometimes, especially when you're dealing with other people, even people that you already know very well, if you can slow down a little bit and you can get past that initial snap judgment, you can you can conquer some of those bias and you can get to some real information maybe that you didn't discover before or didn't know about a person you thought you really knew from before. Um, yeah, and I think that really touched me this morning. So thank you again, Brother Piper. That was great.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that. And I think you're actually pointing to something that is like maybe the only key that we have. Like it's to hold in abeyance those judgments or those snap expressions or predictions and just wait and see if more data shows itself or if your intuition provides something with more imagination than just the regular thing that is presented automatically. Thank you for that.
Venerable Master Valder.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Matt, for this good talk, this good paper. It brought back a lot of memories of a couple instances in our initiation ceremony where the big lesson is self-reflection, right? And there are certain things that occur during the ceremony that we really force the candidate to reflect and voice what's going through their mind. And it's not an idle activity. It's not an activity where they get prompted, right? They really have to answer these questions out of their own minds and their hearts, right? And we're all listening to it as it goes by. The whole purpose of this activity is to get the person accustomed to think about themselves, to self-reflect, to really dig in and find those faults that are within them, and they have to recognize those faults. And one of the things one of my apprentices said that made a lot of sense is that that exercise actually brings about a lot of humility, right? And once you're able to do that, once you're able to be accountable of your own mistakes, your own faults, those things, those rough edges that we're all working towards, you become a lot more compassionate and more understanding, more open-minded towards other people's struggles. You don't judge quickly, right? You don't jump to conclusions. You give them some grace. So I think, being able to travel, right, to from relationship to relationship, from encounter to encounter, it's an excellent tool to carry with us. It's an excellent muscle to cultivate because you just never know who you're going to be dealing with, right? What kind of struggles they're going through and everything. So being able to emphasize and not emphasize, empathize and be compassionate as a human being is extremely important for a society, for a community. And it brings about a cohesion that I think we're lacking very much so in today's world. That's all. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Valdir.
Well
Brother
said.
Waco, member of
If
the High Council.
may I say something?
Of course, go ahead, Mason.
Brother Valdir, I feel like right there you just kind of hit the nail on the head. I think we're all walking around with our own bit of emotional baggage to where even in the most minute ways we are reacting and lashing out and we don't even realize it and the damage it causes.
Absolutely.
Brother of the
Well,
High Council.
good morning, brothers.
Good morning,
Happy
Waco.
4th of July. I hope you are doing well. Outstanding presentation, Matt. Well, I think there are plenty of points that I would like to uh, recall. I don't know if I will be able to recall them all, but one of the things that really stood out for me personally is, yeah, you very well outlined the essence of this idea that I've always been toying with, which is, I think John came up with this idea, which was the collective unconscious, or I might get this wrong, but you can look it up, which is this idea that we are constantly being ruled by external forces, like someone else is puppeteering us, pulling the strings, and we don't know who that force or what that kind of thing is. We just can conceptualize it, but it's not very accurate. So I was, for example, I was sitting at a concert that I was, I think, uh, on April or so, and so I was there observing all the people around me, looking at the pictures, and I was like really thinking to myself. And now, when I think about it retrospectively, I don't understand what what those people were up to. I mean, those people were in such an elation, taking photos, laughing, enjoying, having a great time. But I didn't quite understand why. They were just looking at some pictures, and I think it just kind of reminded me that we do seem to do things without knowing what we are doing. We think we do when we pretend, maybe, like we know ourselves, but we don't. And like, I think Socrates claimed this, which is that the first step on the way to enlightenment and wisdom is the recognition of one's own ignorance. Otherwise, you don't advance, because you just already think that you have all the knowledge, all that is to know, all that is knowable, and it's not the case. And I also, as last point, um, you know, uh, there's this theory that is constantly being put forward by, or that has been put forward by the smartest intellectuals of all time, which is that our life is just a story. And so we are constantly traveling, and hence the idea of the traveling man. We're constantly traveling from point A to point B, meaning, and the only reason we would do that conceivably is because point B is better than point A, or at least we think so, right? And so, like maybe it's a very basic example that just occurs to me. A spouse, a husband and a wife, and one day maybe the husband comes home and all of a sudden the wife discovers that he has a lipstick mark on his neck. And so as funny as it may seem, I mean, not funny for the wife at all, but she's gonna think, oh, I thought I knew you. I thought we were traveling together, from point A to point B, but now I just realized that you are not the person I thought you were. And if you are not the person I thought you were, maybe I am not the person I thought I was either. And so I thought I was at home, but no, I wasn't. I just was you know, in a house of a stranger. So it's really kind of a thing for all of us to pay more attention to. And I think, yeah, it was a very deep presentation. I have no words to express how influential it was. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Joaco. If I could just slip in real quick, there's a book called I think it's called Symphony of Selves, and it talks about how we have this idea that we're like this objective, discrete, kind of unchanging thing. Like there's this core that's like basically the same thing, but really this guy's theory is that there are different selves that come up and take precedence at different times and in relation to different causes and conditions. And I just thought that was interesting. Like we can't rely on ourselves to always be one thing in one way. This is always like more like a flowing like river type thing. I love that. Thank you, Joaco. I appreciate that, brother.
Brother Anthony Herrera, it's good to see you here in the meeting, brother. Hope you're doing
Hi,
well.
good afternoon. I appreciate the speech today. Really brought up a lot of things. I just want to say, you can't get rid of a temper by losing it. So I'll start off with that.
Right.
I heard a lot of things. I've heard a lot of travel. I've heard a lot of emotional side. I've heard a lot of experiences, which can absolutely confuse everybody on this call. Our experiences are experiences, but what we can take from it is to know one thing. We are absolutely a fractal of source. We are absolutely a thought, emotion, and action. And the rule of the governance of the universe says self-preservation. So to judge is a lower being within the 7 cycles, chakras, moons, planets, whatever it may be. To take that out of you and rise it, there won't be any judgment. There shouldn't be any judgment because you're only here to look at yourself and to better yourself. The caring piece, which is the generative solution or action, is really the caring piece. So if you care enough about yourself, you don't really have to worry about being judged or worrying about the lower frequency of fear, which I think I heard too, which is a low form of frequency. If there's anything a galactical society's knowledge will express to us through any of the multi-dimensions, which I think we're dimension number 3 of the cycle of creation, then we don't have to worry about any of the outer elements, but focus on the inner elements. And I want to say that it touches a lot of points here, and I'll make it quick. It touches a lot of points. When we speak of a traveling man, in essence, does that mean traveling how? Is it traveling inner to meet the outer? Is it traveling below to meet the above? Wherever that travel is, we already know the answers. We've had them. We've had them through Akashic records. We know exactly what the answers are. The child who's very inquisitive, asking questions, it's because we need to teach them how to go find those answers within. So beautiful speech. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
Thanks,
brother.
Anthony.
If I
I'm really happy you brought up real quick judgment. I constantly realize that my choice, if I can be said to have one, is between judgment and love. When I'm in judgment and when I'm looking at someone from that kind of top down way, I'm not in love. My heart isn't open. Um, and that's where things divide for me. Anyways, thank you so much for that.
Thank you,
Joshua.
if
brother.
I could if I could jump in real quick, Josh, if you don't mind, because
You are the
You're good.
president. Do you think he's gonna mind?
Go ahead.
There's plenty of time.
think um so no, because you Anthony said one word in particular and it really stood out to me. The word care. And it's something that I mean, care is a meaningful word to many people, but those of us who have gone through either even just the first 3 degrees or even any of the Scottish Rite 32nd degrees, care is a topic that is often talked about, whether it's self-care or whether it's care for other people. It's just a common topic that's brought up in Masonry, and it's a very important topic that really solves just about any problem when you think about it. If we care about one another, we're gonna do the best for one another, and we're gonna and that's gonna encourage us to do so many other things because we care, right? I care about you, Luis. So if you need something, I'm gonna help you, right? I care about Waco. So if Waco is in need, we're gonna help him. You know what I mean? So care is really that's the like one thing that we've sort of forgotten how to do as a human as a species altogether. I think is just to care about. Some of us still know, but as a collective, we've forgotten how to care about each other.
Sean, if I may say one quick thing, or maybe two. One is I'm sorry to hear about your the passing of your aunt, Matt.
Oh,
Uh,
thank
and
you.
uh, and Sean, it really starts with source. It starts with not caring about anybody, but caring for yourself. And then everything else comes naturally to care enough about everything around you, with you, whatever that relationship is. You care about yourself first, then the caring automatically comes through the loving green chakra, which is your heart. So
Yeah,
it starts with you.
exactly. Yeah, you have to care. As within, so without, right? This the second hermetic principle, also known as above, so below. You have to care. To me, that's you have to care about yourself first within, before you can truly affect those around you positively without.
Brother Benjamin, Joshua
Go
Benjamin,
ahead,
member of the
Josh.
High
All
Council.
right. I loved everything that was said right there. And I want to say, President Piper, that was a beautiful offering and presentation. And I agree also with in response of what Anthony said. No, one of the things that really stuck out with me was the first time it being able to see the person, even though you've seen them multiple times throughout it could be someone a year you've seen for over a year, or someone you saw just last week, but being able to go back to that checkpoint of like the first time seeing them, having that same curiosity, seeing them as like them as just like as their story and seeing their story more than the model that you created of them. Being able to still have that curiosity, what's more to this story? What's their development? Be able to be able to create and bridging empathy as we are all living a human experience and have a story ourselves. So how do you do that? It's like a checkpoint, but you have to ask the deep questions to know yourself, to unravel your own biases that created that judgment. to get back to that point of compassion, to continue that curiosity and point before you judge them and yourself of how you're going to judge them, because you had to create those realities from somewhere from within. Was it a loving standpoint? Was it a fear standpoint or anxiety standpoint that you created those judgments? So you had to unravel those to erase that and focus on bettering each other and coming from really caring about that person, like Sean said, instead of just comparing or competing, which our ancestors did to like survive. So that really like touch point really made me think about how can I what parts of me uh, are crafting these models on people. What am I judging on these people, on basically on these people that are taking me away from just seeing them as a human being with their own story. So that's what I took from the offering. I
Beautiful.
appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
President Piper, and also Anthony's comments too, and Sean's.
I would like real
Hey.
quick. I would like to pick on the uh, concept of care that Sean just brought up. I'm gonna be quick because I know that I already spoke and I don't want to hijack the entire session. Matt, there is this philosopher Heidegger who there is a person whose name I don't see today, but he normally brings him into the conversation. So he proposed that the minimal unit of existence is care because it's almost self-intuitive, it's self-evident. The prime drive of humans is the fact that you care about things. Otherwise, I mean, we would just our entire systematicity would grind to a halt. And the counterpart of care is pain. And I think I don't have to just explain that to you. You already understand where I'm going. I mean, pain argues for itself. You can say that you don't believe in pain, but it doesn't help if you are in pain, right? If you are in agonizing pain, it's like an underlying instrument of existence. And so the way you counteract that negative force or that inherent force, I dare say, is by caring. And like very well Sean pointed out, I strive to be as sympathetic and as compassionate as I can. That's why I sometimes throughout the week, as some of you have noticed, guys, I reach out to some people to see how they are doing. That's not something I do with anybody. I just do it with a very relatively intimate, close, very narrow group of people because I absolutely want them to see, I want to see them happy, and I think that's just is a very I just thought it was an important concept to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Joaco. As you're saying that, I'm thinking that the difference between caring for one person and caring for 10 people and 100 or a group of 1,000, how our capacity, seems to shift depending on how far out. Like you can't care as much for nationality as you can for a living person in front of you. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it was just occurring to me as you were talking. Brother Luis.
Yes, good morning, brothers, and happy 4th of July again. When I was younger, I always thought that it would be a luxury to live an ordinary life, a life under the radar, where I can have an education, I can have a family, live like that, with no luxuries, nothing like that, age and die. That would have been my ideal life. When I left Peru, I wind up in London. And in London, I got to live at the castle of the royal family. At that moment, I thought to myself, why me? What is this happening? I never thought for this. I never wanted any of this. When I came here to the United States, I became a Freemason and automatically I became a family member of the High and Mighty. Later, I was adopted by the United States District Attorney. Later, I was accepted in medical school and became a physician. Later, I became an officer at the Armed Forces of the United States. Later, I went into real estate and became a very successful investor in the real estate business. One of the saddest experiences in my life, but at the same time the most gratifying, has been that after getting this position where I am at right now, I see young people like I was once approaching me. But they already know who I am. I don't know who they are. And I made it a point in my life to exaggerate my care for these people, for anyone that approaches me, with the only objective of putting a mirror to themselves and letting them know you are worthy of my attention. You are worthy of my help, because certainly I didn't do this by myself either. I try to emphasize what that question that you started your class with. Have I ever been mistaken about myself? Well, I had. I never thought I was gonna reach anything like this. And that is exactly the message I try to impart to anyone that knows me and meets me. Yes, it is possible. Yes, you have the potential. Yes, you should try. If you want to shoot at the top of the trees, try to shoot at the stars. Maybe you'll come close to it. And not only because of the inherent importance of you as a child of the great architect of the universe, but also because as his creation we have inherent potential to become the best we can do, not by ourselves, but with people like all of us here, where we belong to this wonderful Masonic family, where there is no one of us that wouldn't take his shirt off his back to help one another without judgment, always giving the opportunity, because the grand architect didn't make a mistake when he brought us here all together. No one is here because we just happen to be here. It was our destiny. The finger of the grand architect was behind it all. And to me, it is a privilege and an honor always to meet with all of you every Saturday and call you my brothers.
Beautiful. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you very much, Brother Luis. Um, Brother Sean, if you don't mind, I'm going to close out the meeting and then hopefully you can kick off our social hour.
Sure.
Great. As you all know, my brothers, it has been a great gathering of minds, and we thank you all for dedicating this hour and spending it with your brothers for the fellowship and the sharing that we have been able to partake in. Your participation, insight, and energy has been most edifying, and we hope that during this devotional meeting, you will choose to hang out for the social meeting following this hour. I will read the closing scripture, and then the benediction shall be offered by Brother Waco. So, behold how good and how pleasant it is to the grand architect of the universe for brothers to gather together in unity.
Let us pray, my brothers. Grand Architect of the universe, with grateful hearts, we draw these labors to their appointed close, giving thanks for the light that has been shared, the fellowship that has been strengthened, and the wisdom that has been sought. May we never mistake knowledge for wisdom, nor words for deeds. But remember that the truest measure of our labor is found in the character that we carry beyond these digital walls. Let what has been planted this day bear fruit in patience, integrity, compassion, and steadfastness. Keep alive within us the spirit of brotherly love, that distance may never weaken our unity, nor the burdens of the world cause us to forget the higher calling that has brought us together. Grand Architect of the universe, source of eternal wisdom, receive our gratitude, direct our path, and may thy everlasting light remain with us always. And I say all these words in thy holy name. Amen.
So
So
much
mote it
be
be.
It be.
beautiful.
maybe.
Thank you very much, Wako. That
You're
concludes
welcome,
the.
President.
You always have such lovely prayers, I
You
feel.
really do. I'm always amazed.
That concludes the regular devotional meeting of the Society of Light. And we welcome you to the social hour, aka the happier hour. And this hour is fully dedicated to supporting the mission of Masonry, which is creating a society of brothers where they are friends, and hypocrisy and deceit are unknown, sincere and plain dealings distinguish them, and where with the tongue and with the heart we join together, not only in promoting each other's welfare, but rejoicing in each other's prosperity. So, thank you all for your time. And Brother Sean, you had a comment still from the devotional meeting.